Good evening. Welcome back to the Deep 404. I want to do a little bit of a talk about some of the going-ons in the last day or so in the Middle East and some news which is very interesting. Joseph Borrell, who's the head foreign representative for the EU, has come out making a statement about Benjamin Netanyahu financing Hamas. This is a big, interesting piece of news, and I believe he's referring to an article which came out in the Jerusalem Post in 2019, in March 2019, and it is titled Netanyahu, Money to Hamas, Part of Strategy to Keep Palestinians Divided. So what seems to have happened here is that well, as we know, in Qatar is where the main financing for Hamas is organised, and I guess the leadership of Hamas it's controlled from Qatar. And it seems as though funding was travelling from Qatar to Hamas. Israel decided to get into the middle, insert themselves as the middleman there. So they would take the funding, they were aware of it, and I think they were in fact even involved in the process of providing it as an intermediary from Qatar to Hamas. So this is an interesting twist. As I say, and this is reported in the Jerusalem Post in 2019. I've included the link in here so you can look in the description and go and read about this yourself if you like to. But Joseph Borrell has come out and raised this publicly on the platform that he has. And again, this is just an interesting piece of background around Hamas, how it has operated, the involvement that has been between Israel and Hamas in the past. It's not, as I was commenting on Twitter, on someone's post today, it is not a simple black and white scenario in Hamas. Lots of people say this about any conflict. They know 100% what's right and wrong. It's simple for them, black and white. But it's not. Things like this complicate it. So if you actually have Israel for a period of time preferring Hamas to the Palestinian organization, that was the other option there, and then allowing funding, perhaps even being involved in the funding of Hamas, I guess that allows the question to be asked of, is there some responsibility attributable to the Israelis for the growth and success and continuance of Hamas? Interesting one, anyhow. The airstrikes in Yemen on the Houthis continue. The U.S. has recently recategorized the Houthis as a terrorist organization. In repeated statements from U.S. representatives, White House representatives, Admiral Kirby and others, spokespeople for the Pentagon, when asked if the U.S. is at war with Yemen or in Yemen, the response has been a lot of umming and ahhing and linguistical gymnastics to get around the point of sort of saying, well, yeah, it looks like it. You know, we've bombed them for a week straight and we're now planning on increasing the bombing. Again, an interesting strategy. Doesn't look as though it's really going to have the desired result, if the desired result is to stop the Houthis from attacking US, UK and Israeli-aligned shipping through the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Even it appears Joe Biden is aware of this. In a short video clip I saw of him being interviewed, it looked as though he may have been on his way to boarding a helicopter from the sound. The reporter asks Joe Biden, are the airstrikes in Yemen working? And then Biden leans in and says, well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes. Now, the second point, I'm not 100% sure of what he is referring to continuing. Are the airstrikes going to continue? Maybe he's answering yes to that. Or are the Houthis going to continue? Maybe he's answering yes to that. I think in all cases here, he's correct. That in both cases, the airstrikes are continuing. We've seen that now. They're going to continue. There's talk of them being expanded and this becoming a real continued conflict with no end given. I saw some announcement, somewhere today from the US saying that, look, they don't expect this to become a prolonged war like in Afghanistan or Iraq, but they have no time for when they would stop this conflict, which is starting with the Houthis in Yemen. I think Biden's also right when he's saying, will it stop the Houthis? No. Will they continue? Yes, because they will continue. They're able to continue even with their sites and locations being bombed by the Americans, because they require so little to enact their side of this asymmetric warfare they're carrying out. They need a few speedboats and a couple of, assault rifles and a few men keen to give it a crack, and that is enough for them to threaten the shipping, to cause insurers to not give insurance. And we're getting reports of this now, that UK and US ships are struggling to get insurance if they wish to travel through the southern Red Sea. It is enough to deter major freighting companies from sending their vessels through that area, because if they do have product which they need to get to Israel or from Israel, they don't want to take the risk of that happening. And so they are then paying the excess to go around Africa or however it might be. So the Houthis are continuing and will continue to be able to leverage this pressure on the global shipping. I think it's 15 to 25% of global shipping traverses through the Red Sea. This is something they can continue to do regardless of whether they are having their missile launch sites bombed in Western Yemen. That may degrade their ability to enact attacks directly on US warships in the area, and British warships, French warships, Italian warships, those that may be there as Australian warships being there supporting. But it's no guarantee that they won't be able to do that. We have seen reports of successful missile strikes on transport, freighters, tanker, carrier sort of ships already by the Houthis. And I guess it becomes a game of volume. If the Houthis are able to gather together enough drones to fly at one of the US ships, enough to overwhelm it such that it is unable to shoot down all of the incoming drones, and then supply a couple of anti-ship missiles as well, of which the Houthis do have. I may even jump here, if you just give me a moment, to an image, which I think, here we go. So this is reportedly some of the missiles that the Houthis have available to them. The Rubez, which is an older Soviet-made missile, the number one, the top, and the Al-Mandab. Again, they're unclear apparently if these are still being used, a range of 80 kilometres. The Al-Mandab 2, which is number 3 there, created in Iran, 300-kilometre range. The Sayad, the number 4, which is an Iranian anti-ship version of a Paviv 351, an 800-kilometre range. The Quds Z0, likely more than 800-kilometre range. And the Sejil, number 6 on the list there, Iranian one, and again, and it likely a range of 180 kilometres. So they've got anti-ship missiles that can reach out 800 kilometres. That covers all of the central to southern Red Sea and Gulf of Aden from their bases. So there's no guarantee that the Houthis wouldn't be able to enact a successful anti-ship missile attack on a naval craft, a US naval craft in the area. The Houthis in the last week have struck the Chem Ranger, an Iranian-backed, the Chem Ranger, a Marshall Island-flagged US-owned Greek-operated tanker. There are additional reports of strikes on bases throughout Yemen, near Sada, Tahiyya, Sana'a, As Sawama, Al Hawban, At-Taisiyah and port facilities in Al-Hodeida and Salif. There's still information coming out about the damage that these missile strikes on these Houthi locations, what the damage has been. However, a response from a member of the Houthi organization, Mohammed al-Baghiti, he has said that as far as ships from all other countries, including Russia and China, are concerned, their navigation in the region is not under any threat whatsoever. So the Houthi activity being limited to, as they have said, Israeli-related or flagged or tied, some having some ties to Israel ships, and now US and UK ones, which was an escalation by the Houthis after the first joined US-UK strikes on the Houthis. He goes on to say, Mohammed al-Baghiti, that moreover, we're ready to ensure the safety of their journey across the Red Sea because the freedom of navigation plays an important role for our country. Here he's referring to the ships from all other nations, including Russia and China. Interesting note, the MV Gibraltar Eagle, which was struck by the Houthis earlier this week, had previously turned its automatic detection system, an AIS, signal off for a number of days, and its destination port is not specified in regular Western tracking sites. Now, this is reportedly unusual. This is a dry goods transport. There are some indications. Now, this information I got from John Helmer's website. I think it's johnhelmer.net. Have a look there. It's got some good information. But the Houthis have struck the Gibraltar Eagle, and it appears as though there was some unusual activity with it travelling without its automatic identification system turned on for a number of days, its destination port not being specified. Now, there are websites which you can go to where you can track the position of shipping. I do have one here somewhere, I think, where you can track the position of ships into real time as they're traveling around. You can gather information about those ships. If if we go and click on one here, it's a cargo ship. Some of them will give you information. This one here you can see on the screen, its AIS tracking is on. This is a free service that I'm using. I'm not paying for this particular service, but you can get additional information on ships if you pay for the service. So you get just where their position is and information about them and things like their previous ports where they've recently been and berthed and where their destination ports are. And so what is being said here is that this Gibraltar Eagle, oddly, is not providing a destination port. So one might surmise from that it is perhaps planning on travelling to Israel, and it's trying to keep that quiet. It's not giving its location, its identification away. It's not indicating where it's going. And in the reporting that I read, there's some indication that it may contain South Korean manufactured arms destined for either Ukraine or Israel. So we don't know. There was apparently there was also a strike on the Chem Pluto, a different ship, on the 23rd of December. But an interesting note about that, it was an Israeli-owned vessel. It was transporting Saudi oil cargo, and its destination was India. Reports are that the Indian government was briefed by the Houthis as to why the attack upon the Chem Pluto occurred, and it was due to its Israeli ownership, not because of its Saudi-origined oil cargo, not because of its destination for India. And we are getting the indication of the Houthis that they are providing strong cooperation and warning and awareness to those nations other than Israel, UK, and the US in what's happening here. Now, yesterday there are reports that in Iraq, an MQ-9 Reaper was shot down. Now, there are early reports from November that the Houthis shot down an MQ-9 Reaper in November. It seems that the reporting is that yesterday over the Al-Maqdadiyah and in the Ad-Dilaya province, this MQ-9 reconnaissance Reaper was shot down. Today, I saw some additional reporting which was alleging to show debris, confirming that was the case, the sort of debris from one of these drones. Reportedly, the Reaper took off from SLM Air Base in Kuwait. The Americans have 6 Reapers stationed there, and that drones regularly take off patrols from this air base for strikes and reconnaissance on Syria and Iraq. So one of those has been apparently shot down in Iraq today. News also today, there have been from Iranian-backed sources, they have assumed responsibility for strikes on an American base in Iraq. In those strikes, there has been damage admitted to the facilities. There has also been damage reported. In interesting reporting, again, talking about like some damage, not terrible damage, but it was damage of a traumatic brain injury type to two American servicemen there. A traumatic brain injury, I think, only comes in one flavour, which is severe. I think if you have traumatic brain injury, then you have been damaged pretty severely. You've been wounded badly. It's not the sort of thing that I imagine you recover from quickly, if at all, in many cases. So, unfortunately for those two American servicemen, it seems they have become casualties of these attacks on the Iraqi bases. Note, also in some reporting from yesterday, the Iraqi Prime Minister has asked again for the American forces to leave the country. Now, there hasn't been a whole heap of reporting that I've investigated on this, but I have seen reports that the US have just said, we haven't really received the memo. This was after he'd asked the first time. I haven't seen their response to what may have happened after the second request yesterday, but it does appear as though the Iraqis themselves have had enough, would like the American forces out of their country, and I guess so as to stop Iranian forces launching missiles over Iraq to attack the Americans. They prefer the Americans were gone and not have the Iranians landing missiles in their area, I suppose. A little more from John Helmer. I just want to read a little bit about what he's reporting on here. So this is full credit. What I'm going to read, the next little sections here are from John Helmer and Sergei Lavrov. So this week, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke by telephone with Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and announced coordination at all levels, emphasizing the unwavering mutual commitment to the fundamental principles of Russian-Iranian relations, including unconditional respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and other principles of the UN Charter, which will be confirmed in the upcoming big interstate agreement between the Russian Federation and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, all levels, Helmer is suggesting, all levels includes military coordination. It also means, he believes, coordination with the Ansar Allah representatives in Tehran. So Helmer is suggesting that here, through Russia's close ties with Iran, strengthening ties, this commitment from the foreign minister to their ongoing relations, including unconditional respect for each other and territorial integrity and their sovereignty, that this will be extending down to coordination and communication with the Houthis at that level. And I guess that might be why we're starting to see things like the Houthis reporting information about attacks to India and the likes, and explicitly calling out in their communications that all other nations, including Russia and China, will be given free travel by us. We will not intercept their craft. As for the Houthi operations in the Red Sea, Helmer goes on to say, Lavrov and Amir Abdollahian explicitly linked them to the Israeli-American blockade of the Palestinians in Gaza, calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and unhindered humanitarian access to the enclave to provide urgent assistance to the affected civilian population. Earlier on the same day, this was January 15th this week, the Indian Foreign Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar met in Tehran with Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi and held detailed talks with Foreign Minister Amir Abdollahian. The Indian minister revealed the same order of priorities for India as Lavrov revealed for Russia. Strategic state interest shared with Iran for a long-term future, but for now, the link between the Houthi shipping campaign and the Gaza blockade. So, India, Russia aligning with Iran and the Houthis and saying, we're supporting you, we've got communications with you, and we recognize that the reason the Houthis are carrying out this campaign is because it is directly tied, as they have said, to Israel's blockade and bombing of the Gaza Strip. And this is why the American comments seem so strange, for them saying, well, we don't want war. We're not at war with the Houthis. We're just bombing them daily, day in and day out now, and looking to extend that. It's upon the Houthis to stop this. If they want to stop it, the Houthis can stop what they're doing at any time. But with no recognition, consideration or discussion around what the Houthis are clearly expressing, and everyone's very aware of, that they are doing this because of the Israeli attack on Gaza. There are ways to de-escalate situations, and the way here would be, as I've said before, for the US to speak to the Houthis and say, yep, we understand 100% what your goals are. We know why. All right, we will speak to the Israelis. We will do something to try and tone this down and slow things down. The Houthis, I imagine, would then start to say, okay, we'll give you a chance. You do that, we'll let your ships through. And things would calm down and de-escalate. But the US is not taking that approach. They've taken the approach of, we are making the rules in this area and you will obey us and we will bomb you until you do. Now, the Saudis have had a long go at bombing the Houthis, and the Americans have supported that for a long time. It's been tragic for the civilian population, as always happens in these nations when large countries war with them, but it hasn't stopped the Houthis. And I doubt that this campaign of bombing and missile strikes that's starting up now will stop the Houthis. So we're not seeing de-escalation in this area here. Lavrov, so this is Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. His statements are becoming very clear about the Russian position on things, and this is a change for Russia. Russia has traditionally been a very strong supporter of Israel. Strong, large Jewish community in Russia. But Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says, I will now say it very frankly. The Israelis, the statements made by the defense minister, military commanders, a number of other ministers, they put it out there that the Palestinians are not people, that they are animals. Israelis should not even be given the impression that because they suffered in World War II, they are allowed to do anything today. This is a very strong message coming from the foreign minister of Russia. This obviously has been discussed with and approved by President Putin. And so this is a message from Russia to Israel and directly to Benjamin Netanyahu that the Israelis cannot assume that they can do anything today, regardless of their past and what may have happened in the Holocaust and World War II, which the Russians are very aware of. The Soviets came in the end, 1945, and were the force that led to the victory for the Soviet and the British and American and their allies. They played a very large role in that, and they paid a very high price in terms of loss of life in that conflict. Sergei Lavrov is now saying that we're aware of that. That doesn't allow you to do what you're doing today. So, a big change there. I guess if I was to summarize with Benjamin Netanyahu's statements that Israel will control from the river to the sea, that this is an indication that he is suggesting there will be no Palestinian control in this area at all. This covers Gaza and the West Bank, and that it will ultimately all become Israeli. He's openly said there is going to be no two-state solution here. And this puts people at a loggerheads. And so I think that what we're seeing here is that Joe Biden has lost control here. The tail is wagging the dog. Israel is directing the US. Joe Biden doesn't have the skills or the ability to stop Israel at this stage. And Benjamin Netanyahu is in a position where he does not want this war to end. If this war ends, he has to face his criminal trial prosecutions. He has to deal with all the questions that will be asked about the Hamas October 7 event and why it was able to happen, how they didn't know about it. Questions about this funding of Hamas will come up and will be asked publicly. Right now, the conflict is a popular conflict for the Israeli people, but Benjamin Netanyahu is not popular. His prime ministership is sort of hanging by a thread. So I think Joe Biden has lost control and Benjamin Netanyahu is becoming reckless because he doesn't want to lose his grip on power. I don't think this path ends well for anyone, for any of us, really. Okay, I'm just going to leave this one here, just a short update on what's been going on in the Middle East. I'll look to put together another update on Ukraine and what's happening there. There's a lot going on, of course, the big Russian push all along the front line. Lots happening, but I'll come back tomorrow. Hey, if you're enjoying the channel, please share it with other people. I am getting active on Twitter now as well, so you can look for the Deep 404 there. I'm pushing these videos onto YouTube and Twitter. Please subscribe or follow the Deep 404 at either of those so you keep up to date with the videos as they come out. I hope you're having a great weekend and I'll talk to you soon.